Pastor Jake, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Cameron. Good to be here.
Yeah, excited for our conversation today. Thank you again for being on this podcast and taking the time out of your schedule. So happy to have you on.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, for sure. So I wanted to start off. What I like doing when bringing, especially pastors on, is really understanding your story and your journey. You're now in full-time ministry. I would love to hear how you came to know God and how that relationship with God started. Let's start there.
Sure. Yeah. My story is a second generation story. So my father came to Christ in the early 80s. My family is originally from Australia, and he met Christ in a church called Christian City Church, now called C3. That's a family of churches around the globe now. But at the time was a church in Sydney. He met the Lord there under the ministry of a man named Pastor Phil Pringle, and met my mom in that church, had my brother and I. And so we were raised in Christianity, raised in a really healthy Christian culture. And along with that, a great family culture as well. And so, really, my story of following Jesus is one of those, I guess, less inspiring on paper, but certainly very grateful for in reality, stories where I reaped the benefits of parents who loved the Lord, and who served him faithfully in the context of church community. So I grew up in that, and have never wandered from it. Certainly made plenty of mistakes along the way. It's certainly in my youth for sure, but never wanted to rebel really against God, against church life. And just feel so fortunate. Now I've been married 15 years, have two kids, one 10-year-old, one almost 6-year-old. And we're duplicating what it is that we received raising them in the house of the Lord. Obviously, we're in full-time ministry. My kids are pastors' kids. I was a pastor's kid actually as well. My parents ended up church planting. And so very grateful for our story. Met my wife in church, and happy to be pouring into our kiddos what was poured into us.
Awesome. At what point in your journey, did you realize that you were called to go into ministry?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, I knew from a pretty young age that I wanted to be in full-time vocational ministry. And it started out as simple and plain as that it's what my dad did. And I wanted to follow in my father's footsteps because he made it look so fun. Um, as I said before, we're Australian, and so Australian culture is pretty casual. And so I didn't grow up in a stuffy Christian environment at all. I never felt pressure as a PK.
Mhm.
And so I loved what I saw in my parents. C3 is pretty empowering of women as well. So I saw my parents leading together. And I just loved that. I loved the environment that I grew up in. And then as I got older, it took on its own sense of individual purpose for me. I wouldn't say that I'm doing what I'm doing now because it's what my dad did. I'm doing what I'm doing now because it's what I feel like God's called me to do. But it really did start like that. And I actually think God intends that generational transfer, by the way. I think a lot of times Christians feel maybe uninspired by their testimony because there's no prodigal
Yeah.
story, you know. I don't think God necessarily intends for the prodigal stories. You know, you read in his instruction to Israel, there's a lot of teach this to your children, teach this to your children, talk about it all the time, because God intends for there to be generational transfer. I think that's the ideal story, actually. Doesn't mean it has to be all of our story, and certainly not throwing any shame on anyone who's not had that experience. But it is a beautiful thing when that can happen. And so that happened for me, not just with Christianity, but with vocation as well. And then by the time I was in my early 20s, I felt a very strong sense that this was the one thing that I was supposed to do with my life, particularly with church planting. and leading in that kind of context. So that's what we do now. We lead a church in Los Angeles. I have a couple of locations here, and then one location over in the kind of suburbs of Nashville as well. And just love it. We've been doing it for 10 years, and it's been an amazing journey.
Mm. And when was it that you moved out of Australia?
I was 7 when we moved out of Australia.
Oh, wow. So you
Yeah,
primarily grew up in the States then?
I did. Yeah, grew up in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, wow.
And then when I was 18, moved out to Los Angeles to be a part of a church plant at the time because I wanted to get some experience with that. I knew that's what I wanted ultimately to do. Had a little stint where I thought I wanted to pursue a songwriting career, and that was fairly short-lived. God redirected me away from that. I think that's a wonderful career for people to pursue if that's what they're gifted to do. It wasn't my primary gifting. So
Mhm.
God redirected me away from that towards what I knew I was supposed to have done ever since I was really quite young. My first strong memory that I was meant to be in vocational ministry was I was probably 14 or 15, and I was sitting late at night down in my in the living room of my family home, and I was watching a worship DVD of I don't know, probably 1,000 youth students
Mm.
who were worshiping, and I was so moved by it. I actually was moved to tears as I watched this film, and I remember my mom coming downstairs, and she sits down next to me. It's probably 10:30 at night, and she asks me, "What do you feel when you watch this?" And I like wiped the tears from my eyes as I heard her coming down the stairs. And typical teenage boy, I'm just like, nothing. I don't feel anything. um, and that memory has always stuck with me because I felt deeply, and I knew in that moment that I was supposed to be a part of something like that.
Mm.
And that was a significant moment for me.
Awesome. And then, so you primarily grew up in the Atlanta area, and then where did you go after that?
From Atlanta, moved to Los Angeles, and yeah, really in one way or another for the last 18 years
Hmm.
have been directly involved in local church ministry from a leadership standpoint. Um, and I don't ever tire of it. I'm never bored. I
Yeah.
still love it. I love it more today than I did when I was a teenager. And certainly the complexities have grown. The challenges are there. The last 4 or 5 years have been laborsome in many respects with COVID out here on the West Coast and the impacts of that.
Hmm.
But I still love it and still know. I don't think I know that this is what I'm supposed to be giving my life to, and so I'm very grateful to do it.
Yeah. What's been some of the major challenges that you've had being a leader in the church for as long as you have? Because I know it's the life of a pastor and ministry is not easy, from what I've been learning, and what I've been seeing.
Yeah,
What's kind of been your challenges throughout your journey so far?
there's so many, but the greatest challenge of ministry is the greatest joy of ministry and its people. That ultimately is who we're ministering to, uh, for the sake of helping them to become more like Christ and to help them get caught up in a cause greater than themselves. That's a great joy, but it's also a great challenge, especially in a climate like ours. And when I say ours, I mean that in multiple layers. There's the climate of the Western world, particularly modern day America, with all of its individualism
Yeah.
and its highly politicized climate. There's those kinds of challenges. And then on I guess, moving in on the concentric circles, there's the challenges that come along specifically with a place like Los Angeles that brings
Hmm.
economic challenges for people. It's not an easy place to live and thrive. And then a lot of people are here for a very distinct purpose in their own minds. And so sometimes you're helping people go on the journey of not setting up their own career objectives in competition with the life that God has for them, and how those things need to come together and synthesize. So there's a layer of challenges, but the through line in all of them is helping people grow. And of course, sometimes people love that journey. They want to grow. They're open to pastoral wisdom and feedback and correction and all that. But then other times people are not so open, and that brings its own challenges
Mhm.
with it. So I think discipleship is the great call and the great challenge of the church and of the pastor. And I don't think that's unique to our time. I just think it faces
Yeah.
different kinds of challenges as culture evolves.
Yeah, for sure. And what is it? I came across this book years ago by Pastor Wayne Cordero, Leading on Empty, and he was talking about his story and his journey of leading on empty. So, what is it that you do to kind of fill your cup? Because being in ministry and being not only a pastor but a leader of a church can be really exhausting because you're pouring into your people, like you said, and there's a lot of complexities that come with that. So what is it that you do to kind of keep your cup full?
Yeah, I think that there's the kind of the answer that people expect when it comes to that. Things like leisure and recreation and stuff that's fun, Sabbath, all that,
Yeah.
and that's a part of my life. I like to run. I love to read, and so those things are part of my rhythm. I have two young kids, so there's basketball games and all the kinds of family activities that come along with that. And I certainly encourage that, and am frequently challenged in my own life to have that be more routine. Uh, I think what's really important, though, when it comes to the life that God has called us to live, is what we're inputting into ourselves, so that we can share in the way that God has called us to share. And so for me, honestly, what keeps me sustaining a pretty upbeat pace for a long period of time is just regular discipline when it
Hmm.
comes to my own life with God. Um, and so I won't say anything uh, mind blowing here, but certainly a lot of people who are engaged in ministry are lacking in the areas of their own prayer life and their own Bible study, um, their own practice of silence and solitude. These disciplines and behaviors that are ancient, for a reason, because they work and they help you to go a great distance. The other thing that I would say is that we work hard to have deep friendships. And so the
Hmm.
people we do ministry alongside are not just coworkers and partners or employees, they're friends. So we spend time with the people that we're doing ministry with, and we love one another and we have fun together. Um, I heard an amazing statement recently from a pastor. He was commenting on that verse where Jesus talks about making friends for yourself with unrighteous mammon. That really obscure verse.
Yeah.
And he made this great statement. He said, the highest purpose of money is friendship. And I thought it was quite a poignant insight into that text. And so spending ourselves and investing ourselves into friendship is, I think, one of the key ingredients to going a long ways in life without burning out, is loving the people that you do it with. And that takes work. That takes a great deal of intention. It doesn't happen because you see each other at the office and on Sunday mornings in church together. It
Hmm.
takes barbecues and vacations together as families and things of that nature. So those are some thoughts off the top of my head. Um, I'm trying to resist being trite, by listing off all the normal
Yeah.
things people would say.
Yeah, for sure. I think you mentioned some pretty good stuff there. Discipline, having those disciplines in your life, and also deepening the relationships with the people you do ministry with. And I think that's so important to not just be because, we're seeing a lot of stuff happen in the church right now. And I think that's really good, healthy things to ensure that you're a leader that lasts.
One other thing I would say is, and this is wisdom that was given to me by a friend several years ago, is always having something to look forward to as a family.
Yeah.
Um, so we try to always have some kind of trip booked upcoming that we just, even if it's 6 months away, we know like, wow, that trip's coming.
Mm.
It might be a 10-day vacation, like what we just got back from. It could be a 2 night or 1 night getaway. But just having something to look forward to, I think, is really helpful psychologically, so that you know that there's some rest coming. Obviously, there's your regular rhythms of rest on a weekly basis, but having something like that to look ahead to, I think, is really helpful.
Mhm. I'd love to hear your thoughts on mentorship. How has mentorship helped you in your journey in ministry so far?
Yeah. It I am only where I am because of people who have poured themselves into me, and I have only ever grown to the degree that I've let them.
Mm,
I'm a firm believer in being a man under authority, and I've had that revelation as the years have gone by. It becomes increasingly more important to me. What I'm referring to there is the centurion in, I think it's Matthew 8, uh, who comes up to Jesus and asks Jesus to come and heal his servant, and Jesus says, "I'll come and heal him." He says, "You don't need to actually come; just say the word." And the reason he has that faith, which Jesus calls greater than any of the faith he's seen in all Israel, the reason he has that faith is because he says, "I'm a man under authority and I'm a man of authority." And I say to the people who are under me, do this, and they do it. The person above me says, do this, and I do it. He understood that he has authority because he's under it. And he recognized that Jesus had the authority to just say the word from where he was because he was so submitted to the authority of God, of the Father. So I really believe that I will only truly have health in my own ministry leadership to the degree that I'm submitted to other people to shape me and mold me. Now, there's different dynamics and I guess a context for that. Sometimes that authority is a mentor that I may talk to a couple times a month or maybe once every few months. And there's a particular lane in which I'm looking to get development from them in. They're not everything. Let me rephrase that. I'm not looking to them to give me everything that I need.
yeah.
Uh, and so there's parts of my life that I've brought them into. But on top of that, having someone that you call pastor, if you will, who you're just fully yielded and submitted to, I think is very, very important. I think a lot of people, and this kind of tracks back to what you were saying a moment ago with some of the trouble that we have in church life. A lot of people get away with not being fully under authority by having a lot of mentors or a lot of brothers to whom they're partially submitted in certain areas of life, but they have no one under whom they come completely under.
Yeah.
And so they get away with looking like a yielded person when in fact they are not fully yielded. They are partially yielded to a lot of different people, but the parts don't equal the whole. So I think we would all do a lot better if we had somebody to whom our life was completely submitted. And obviously, we have that with the Lord. But if you don't have that with a leader, then you don't really have it with the Lord, um, at least not in my experience. And so I have that. I have a man that I call him Pastor, and there's nothing that I wouldn't talk to him about in terms of my own struggles and issues, even if it feels petty, and even if I know it's just my insecurity, I still want to pick up the phone and call him because I need that, and that ultimately is what helps me to be a more healthy dad, husband, minister, the whole ball of wax. So
I guess the next thing that I wanted to talk about is the your church recently went through a series. I listened to one of your sermons, The Brightest in the Darkness. What was the series called?
I think that was from the How to Start a Fire.
Yes, how to start a fire series.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were going through the first 7 chapters of Acts
Hmm.
to look at what are the ingredients for a church on fire.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of specific things that you can look at in terms of, prayer and
Hmm.
mission and all kinds of specific things. But I just wanted to tie all that to like broad things that I think need to be existent in a church in order for them to be used to reach a city.
Yeah, and how do you keep that fire lit within you?
So there's three. Well, let me say it this way: there's three ingredients to a fire in the natural. They are fuel, a source of heat, um, and oh gosh, well, I'm blanking on the third one. uh, oh, and oxygen.
Yes,
Oxygen.
yeah,
You
yeah.
need oxygen. You need fuel, something to burn, and you need a source of heat, whether that be friction or something else. And I think that that's true in church life as well. For a church to be on fire, you need those three ingredients. You need the oxygen of uh, worship, of a life of praise, ascending up to the Lord. You need the fuel of disciples, people to be caught on fire, people
Hmm.
who are available to God. And you need a source of heat, mission.
Yeah.
There needs to be friction. There needs to be, I guess, a cruciform life taken up in the church to go, we're going to endure whatever it takes in order to succeed in what God has called us to do in making disciples. So I think those three things, what I would just boil down to worship, discipleship, and mission are the three things that I think a church needs to have. And a lot of the time, a church will have one or two of the three, but not all three.
Mm.
So they may have a strong emphasis on worship and they love to get together and worship, but they're not very missional. They're not really concerned about, the people outside the church. Or they may have a strong emphasis on discipleship, and they've got all the classes and all the ministries and the ways to help people grow. But their relationship to the Lord and their emphasis and revelation of worship is maybe lacking. And
Mm.
so what we're endeavoring to do is to be great at all three of them. I want a church with a deep revelation of bringing worship to God, a deep revelation of the importance of growing as a disciple of Jesus, and a deep revelation of the importance of reaching the city to which God has planted us. So, broadly speaking, those are the three things that I think need to be there.
And so I know you mentioned like how you keep yourself, your cup filled, but what are some of the things that you do to keep your church really on fire?
I think my primary responsibility there is through vision and preaching.
Hmm.
So, I can cast a vision like that to our church. And then my main means of driving that is through my week in, week out communication to the church, viewing the opportunity to preach as the opportunity to lead and shepherd people towards a common vision. I think is a really effective way of doing that. Obviously, there's all the behind the scenes stuff,
Yeah.
Monday to Friday, where you're meeting with your team of leaders and developing them and making sure that all the systems are pointing in the direction of the vision. All of that is really necessary. But being able to clearly communicate and give that clarity on call to your church towards a particular direction that you feel like God is calling you, I think is a treasure. And a lot of pastors, they miss the opportunity on Sunday because they're just kind of viewing it as uh, here's my time to teach the scriptures. And obviously that's what we're doing. But don't mindlessly teach the scriptures, like teach the scriptures that's going to help fulfill the vision that God has placed on you for your church. I guess I'm speaking specifically to senior or teaching pastors right now.
Yeah.
Um, and there's different philosophies when it comes to how to teach in a systematic way. But I think using the platform to help fulfill the vision that God has on your house is correct.
Mm, that's good. And there are going to be times of challenge in ministry. It's Ministry is not an easy journey, especially being in a role such as yours, being in a leadership role. How do you continue pushing forward even when you face challenging times? Because I think in just leadership in general, I think oftentimes when things get tough, the tendency is to quit. How do you continue to press in and press forward?
Well, God gave me a great wife, so I would say that's first and foremost. So I try to be appropriately vulnerable with her. And the reason I say it like that is I never wanted to shift the burden of what I'm feeling onto her, um, such that now she feels weighed down by what I'm feeling. But I try to be vulnerable in the sense that I bring her into what I'm feeling so that she can encourage me, just as I try to do for her, but also so she can help me get proper perspective. A lot of the time, the burden I feel is self imposed, the pressure I feel is self imposed. And so she can help me get proper perspective in those times. Sometimes the burden I feel is not self imposed, it is the reality of doing ministry. And that's why I come back again to having a great team around you with whom you can be open about your frustrations and points of sadness and sorrow about what you're experiencing together,
Mm,
so that you can encourage one another, so that you can remind each other of the things that we can be grateful for. And that's what helps us keep moving forward. The other thing I'd say is I'm a vision guy, um, and I've never been so discouraged that I could not uh, find that place of God. What do you want to do? And so I try to get into that space of, I know I'm dealing with this right now, and I know this is really hard and hurtful and painful. But God, I also know you're not done. So what's next? Give me something to look forward to. Give me something to strategize, to dream about. Um, and I find that that helps me continue moving on. One thing I've been doing lately that is just so beneficial is becoming more disciplined at memorizing and meditating upon scripture.
mm,
And so, regretfully, I have not been uh, successful in disciplining myself to memorize scripture in the past, but I've been aiming to do it a lot more consistently now. And I just find myself memorizing and thinking about these scriptures and deriving a lot of encouragement from them. And what's really cool is when I derive encouragement from them, I think about the different contexts and places and people with whom I can share that encouragement. And I
mm,
find the fastest way to get encouraged yourself is to encourage somebody else. But not just with like empty encouragement, like, man, you're doing a great job, everything's going to be okay. But like specific encouragement, hey, this scripture says XYZ. Here's what I'm taking from that. Here's how I think that applies directly to what you're walking through. And that builds me up as well, and helps me to find my own perspective again. And so I'm finding that very, very useful. I think God knows what he's talking about again with these simple practices when he invites us into these kinds of things. He knows how helpful they'll be to us if we just do them.
yeah, yeah. Well, awesome. Well, one of the final things I wanted to talk about, and I'm kind of curious about it too, is the recent name change that happened. Tell us a little bit about that, because before it was C3 and now it's Cathedral. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Like I said at the start, my dad got saved in Pastor Phil's church in Sydney, Australia, Christian City Church, now called C3. I've been a part of that movement my entire life.
Hmm.
And this church that we planted almost 10 years ago, um, is part of the C3 movement, has been, still is, and very, very happy to be a part of that family. Love it deeply. At the same time, wanted to have a specific name for our church that gave expression to the kind of uh, local church that we strive to be. Um, and
Hmm.
so that was the motivation behind the name change. Also, on a really practical note, we have a location in Nashville. And so calling ourselves C3 Los Angeles and C3 Nashville wasn't going to work for the long haul, having a church with two names. Um, so that was a practical purpose behind it as well. The reason I landed on Cathedral is I felt like it expressed the vision, not just that I have for the church, but the vision that I think God has for the church, which kind of ties back to that how to start a fire theme. I see the purpose of church in the scripture is for the glory of Christ, the glory of the Lord, uh, and for the beauty of the bride, discipleship, and for the good of the city, that sense of mission. So that worship, discipleship, mission thing. And so we say that we're a church for the glory of Christ, the beauty of the bride, and the good of the city. And the thing about cathedrals is that they capture all three of those. You can't look at a cathedral and not get a sense of, wow, that is God glorifying. Like that points to the magnificence of God, but it also points to the beauty of the church. Wow, that is a beautiful structure. That church is beautiful, and it points to what I think the church is supposed to be, comprised of a beautiful bride that Jesus is going to wed himself to, and the bride, of course, is the people, not the building. But that's what the cathedral points to. And then the good of the city. Many times, cathedrals are in the center of a city or at the highest point of a city, and they're stationed that way for a reason, because they're not meant to be a private club. They're meant to be a beacon of light and hope for the surrounding city to go, I need to be there. That's where salvation is being preached, and the life that God intends for me is there with those people. So I felt like the buildings themselves communicated all three of those elements that are God's design and purpose for the church. And so that's why we decided to go with that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, you also have a podcast that you're involved with as well?
I do. Yeah, I do a theology podcast called Good Theology. In fact, I'll be recording that after we hop off here with an amazing man who's a mentor of mine. His name is David Campbell, and I got connected to him through an online Bible college called Theos Seminary, and he's been a significant part of my life for the last probably 4 or 5 years. Love him so much, and have fun doing that podcast with him, which is basically just me asking him questions and then arguing with him when I don't like what he says.
Well, I'll be sure to drop a link in so people can connect with that podcast.
Great.
Any final comments or thoughts as we wrap up this episode?
Yeah, I just want to say to your listeners that life under the lordship of Jesus is the best possible life you could have. It's not the easiest life, I suppose, but it is so enjoyable and so enriching in all the ways that matter. And so, if you're listening to this as maybe somebody who's maybe you feel like an outsider looking in, maybe you're curious about faith, maybe you're a skeptic, maybe you're a non-believer, look to the scriptures, read the Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, study Jesus and take him at his word, and give yourself to follow him, and see if you don't find that your life is better because you make him the Lord of it. Again, won't be easier, but I think we all know that things that really matter are not the things that are the most easy. And so I would just call people to that. And I've been following him for many, many years now, and I know him and I love him, and he has done things for me, acted so kindly towards me in ways that uh, are so undeserved. And I feel like I'm constantly living in his grace. And that's an amazing thing to be able to wake up every day and know and go, my life is not up to me. It's not all resting on my shoulders. He's with me and he's for me. And so, yeah, that's what I would say.
I appreciate that encouragement, Pastor Jake.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Pastor Jake, and pouring into not only me, but also those that are listening and watching. And thank you. Thank you again.
Of course. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.